Um, well, Bruce and Eddie and I have a history with the AC/DC song "Highway to Hell." And in 2014, when I was playing with the E Street Band, we were in Perth, Australia, the home of Bon Scott, the original singer of AC/DC. I went to go pay my respects to his grave one night in Perth, and then came back to the hotel afterwards. And I saw Bruce, and I said, "Do you think that that AC/DC and the E Street Band might overlap in any way?" And he said, "Maybe." We began rehearsing Highway to Hell at sound checks over the course of the next couple of days, and then found ourselves in a football stadium in Melbourne. And Eddie Vedder happened to be there. Um, and I suggested that maybe we open the show with Highway to Hell with Eddie Vedder singing. So you've got one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time, you know, in Australia, Highway to Hell in Australia, with two of the greatest rock and roll singers of all time, Bruce Springsteen and Eddie Vedder. And it was like an apex moment in the history of live rock music. And so as I was finishing this record, that was the last song that I did for this record. I had made music with a lot of young and exciting artists like, Bring Me the Horizon and Fantagram and Chris Stapleton and Grandson and Mike Posner and Femme and Sama Abdul Hadi. But I wanted to make a song with some of my rock brothers. And during this time of isolation where no one was connecting, I remembered back to that night of one of the most exciting rock and roll experiences of my life, where 80,000 people were connecting, and this kind of lightning strike moment. And here, alone in my studio, like playing the chords to Highway to Hell, imagining what it was like on that stage those years ago, and then completing the song with Bruce and Eddie as like sort of a capstone of the Atlas Underground Fire record. Well, thanks. First of all, like it's ever since, for the last 30 years, when I first started self-identifying as the DJ in Rage Against the Machine in 1991, I've been trying to sort of forge this new vocabulary on the instrument, because I am insistent that the electric guitar is the greatest instrument ever invented by humankind, but it's an instrument that not only has a past, it has a future. And I try to create a bit of that future on every record and push myself to make crazy sounds and noise that I haven't been before, and try as artfully as I can to force them into songs to inflict upon the listener. The song, the solo on the song, the Bring Me the Horizon song, Let's Get the Party Started, is one of my favorite solos that I've ever recorded. A friend of mine called up the other day and he said, "Dude, that solo on the Bring Me the Horizon song, it sounds like I've felt for the last 18 months, fucked up." And I was like, mission accomplished. Yeah, sure. So first of all, working with Bring Me the Horizon, I love the fact that they unapologetically fly the flag of, hard rock and metal, but at the same time are kind of futuristic looking too. Like they, like me, believe that the electric guitar has a place in the future, not just in the past. It's not just something that's part of a tradition. It's part of like an evolving art form. And so I appreciate them for that. And the song that I did with them is one of my favorite songs on the record, just an unapologetic, like kick-ass rock and roll jam. With regards to collaborating with Latin American artists, that one of the songs that is not on this record, but not to give away too much, but there's a really Rodrigo y Gabriela is a group that I've admired for a long time, and we've got something in the works that I hope you'll be able to hear in the not too distant future. But yes. So yeah, first of all, Kiss was my first favorite band. It was the band that made me love rock and roll. It was the band it was my first concert. It was my first like album that I really cared about. It was the first band that I loved. It was the poster that was on my wall as I began to see myself as an adolescent and as a young man. And so I sort of owe a debt to that band. I also lobbied very hard to get them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which felt to me like it was kind of like a club for a few people's favorite bands, but leaving out most of my favorite bands. And so that's why they asked me to be a part of the documentary. And and while there's certainly mixed sides, there's different sides of the Kiss coin, and a lot of the misogyny that's in the lyrics and stuff I don't relate to. I didn't relate to then, I don't relate to now, but I can't deny the fact that I would certainly not be a guitar player were it not for Ace Frehley and Kiss. So I do owe them that debt of gratitude. And then with Prophets of Rage, there's no plans for Prophets of Rage. My anticipation is I'm putting out music now, but to sort of clear the decks at the end of the year in 2022. Rage Against the Machine is touring North America, and so I'm hopeful that's what I'm doing in the immediate future. So it really was like this record was an antidepressant. When I started writing these songs with these collaborators, it wasn't with the idea I'm going to make an album. It was with the idea, it was like, how do I stay sane Tuesday? You know, like, how do I just get through this day with all the keeping the grandmas alive, keeping the kids from going crazy, worrying about this global plague, the political situation here. Will I ever be able to play another live show again? You know, as the death count was rising in the, you know, so in a time of like total isolation, being able to sort of assert that, yes, I am a musician. Yes, I can write songs. Yes, I can connect and collaborate with people in other places. There is life. There is music. There are stars shining somewhere above the cloud cover. It really felt like that. So my hope is the last part of the chain, this part of the redemptive quality of music is not just the writing it. It's not the recording it. It's not seeing it realized. It's sharing it. And that's an important part of the connection. And whether it's in a live setting or whether it's on someone's earbud or their phone or wherever they're listening to music, is knowing that what you've done here in solitary confinement has breached those walls and is now shared by people, you know, in Mexico, in Russia, in Chicago. And that's a part that's very, very satisfying to me. That's why I never mind doing, like, some people go crazy. They never want to do like interviews to talk about their stuff. Like, I'm happy to like, it's a crucial part of it to share that, to say like, yes, the stars do shine above the cloud cover, and here's evidence. Never would have had this record. That was the only way I could have possibly done this. 95% of the guitars were recorded into the voice memo on my phone. You know, I have a studio. I don't know how to work it. There was no engineer coming, and so I just, you know, I read Kanye West recorded his vocals on the voice memo of his phone. I'm like, you can do that? Recorded the guitars into my phone, and I'm going to throw away all these expensive microphones.
Thank you.
Not in the near future. I was able to tour the previous Atlas Underground record. Sean Evans and I put the show together. He was the artistic director for the last two Roger Waters tours. And while we didn't have a Roger Waters budget, we were able to find a way to make a very compelling live show, sort of part, you know, illegal rave, part Barbara Kruger art installation, part heavy metal mosh pit. And so there is a way to make a compelling show, even if these collaborators are not there, but that's not the plan right now. The plan is to go out and rock really hard with Rage Against the Machine. I guess the honest answer would be both. Yes, the idea of the Atlas Underground is to bring together diverse artists to sort of challenge what has happened in guitar before, and to find what the next step, 2 steps, 5 steps are, you know, down the road. Atlas Underground Fire is a solo record. It's a Tom Morello record. It's a record where my guitar is the one voice that connects all the songs. It's a record where I curate who's on it and what it is and but every song is a collaborative process. Every song is determined, the outcome of every song is determined only by the chemistry between myself and the person that I'm playing with. So I don't control any of those 12 songs. The songs are controlled by the chemistry of the two of us. And I think it's important for me, like, I'm very sort of type A and bossy and whatnot, but on this record, I'm able to just let go and let's see where this collaboration takes us, and to not be so precious. And it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be that way. It's like, let's let our combined talents on this crazy day of lockdown, you know, day number 245, where every day feels like it's exactly the same. I don't want to know how this one ends up. Part of the joy of making this record was the unexpected of what happened every day because of that chemistry. Well, I mean, I think it's that there's advantages and disadvantages. The principal advantage is that it's a real democratization of music. And you and me and the guy walking by over there, we can all have a platform in the world of digital music that is equal in every way to Metallica. You know what I mean? There's no longer like a gatekeeper that gets to decide if you get to make a record and if anyone will ever hear it. You get to decide that now. I mean, I recorded this record on my phone. Like if you have a phone today, you have all of the materials that the Beatles had when they made the White Album, or Led Zeppelin had when they made Stairway to Heaven. Like everybody. On your first day, you have all of that. So I think that's the good news. The bad news is for musicians, it's a lot harder to make a living playing music than it once was. And that, you know, the streaming, like there's between YouTube and the streaming services, there's a lot of shady business that goes on. And there are billions and billions of dollars made that do not trickle down to the people who are creating the artistic content that is driving people to those sites where they sell the advertising. So, I mean, that is something that is, you know, and it's still a bit of a Wild West in way too. Like like I still look at my like Spotify, I'm like, really? Does that, like, no one knows, and no one there, like it's a real, like it's still a Wild West where whether you're streaming 200 streams a month or 2 billion streams a month, I think there's a lot of shadiness that's going on there, which is not benefiting the artist. To, and perhaps when I retire, I will take up the job, is that while there is a musicians union, it is not the kind of union that musicians need to combat the issues that you're talking about. You know, like if you got Lil Nas X and Metallica and BTS to go on strike, unless those things changed for, you know, like you'd get a lot of people's attention. This was maybe 15 years ago. I made some sort of preliminary calls. Like I belong to the musicians union, which I've had for 25 years here. But that basically just, you know, like if you play in the symphony orchestra, they make sure that you get the right, which is great, but there's not the mechanism to contend with these new technologies and make sure that independent musicians are treated fairly. That just doesn't exist. And I think it can only exist if there is some kind of solidarity among musicians, which is very, very difficult to do. Because first of all, no manager wants to help you with that. You know, no record company wants to help you with that. And so it really would take some sort of independent organizing in order to, I guess the biggest lesson is that, and it's something I do take for granted now, is that having worked, like the diversity of artists that I mean, even on one record, like this record is pretty diverse, you know, from a Palestinian DJ to Bruce Springsteen, from a reggae artist, to Damian Marley in Jamaica, to, you know, a dubstep artist like Prototype, like it's even on one record, but, you know, from Pete Seeger to Wu-Tang Clan to Metallica, you know, like I've had, like, I don't know that there's another guitarist that has had that sort of like bizarre sort of diversity of experiences. And for me, that's just sort of a regular week at the office. But what I really do appreciate about it, and what I take out of it, is every one of those experiences has helped me grow as a guitarist, as a songwriter, as an artist, and to make these sort of connections and friendships. I always imagined myself when I was in a band being like Led Zeppelin, and I'm in one band forever. And you're in one band and you make music with the guys in that band, and that's that sort of thing. And that's how I saw myself. And then it took Rage Against the Machine. Like we'd make it records every 4 or 5 years. And during that time, like I just have a motor. Like I couldn't stop. If there was a studio door open, I'd walk through it, you know? And like, I just have to play. I'm compulsive, you know, in my need is sort of manic. Like I have to write and I have to play and I have to record and I have to do shows. And that led to this quilt of tremendous experiences, you know, from being in the E Street Band to, you know, playing Woody Guthrie songs with Pete Seeger to, you know, shredding with Kirk Hammett and, you know, Alex Light, like stuff that the posters on my wall came to life, you know, writing songs with Joe Strum, like, and being open to those experiences and not closed off, I guess, is the greatest lesson that I've gotten, has really helped me to grow as an artist and as a musician. One of the butterfly ears of the elephant. Fantagram, I'm a big fan of Fantagram. Josh from Fantagram and I worked on a song on the previous record with Marcus Mumford called Find Another Way. And they reached out to me, he and Sarah, the other half of Fantagram, reached out and said, would you like to do another song? I'm like, yes, my day is free, you know, like every day was back then. But that song happened in a different way than others on this record, which I'm very pleased to report, is they had the sketch for a song, like sort of an outline of a song. So it didn't start with my, you know, Black Sabbath riffs. It started with this kind of spooky, ethereal, electronic beat and chord progression. And so I was like, great, this is a great challenge. And how do I interact with this? And so what I did was, day after day, Josh was the producer. I'd send Josh different soundscapes. Here's just some feedback. Here's a crazy sort of guitar interlude that may or may not even be in the key of the song. Here's 5 different noises in different tones. And I was basically sort of giving him the individual instruments of the orchestra for him as producer to create the symphony. You know what I mean? It's like I was providing the sonic palette for him to paint with. And that was just, it was just a very different way of writing a song for me. And it just provided that kind of like lifeline during those chaotic and crazy days of just one more way to be expressive and one more way to have to invite the unknown into the creative process. Fans, friends, and comrades, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for like the support over the years. Video Slave, Prophets of Rage, my solo work. It's just been the live experiences that I've had in Chile and in Mexico have been been some of the greatest nights, not just of music, but of nights of my life. Sort of experiencing that kind of connection where like an audience believes in a band and a band believes in the audience, you know, in a way that's like Hemingway called it living all the way up. And I think that that's very true of the experiences I've had. So I just want to say a sincere thank you for the continued support along this journey for fans, friends, and comrades, old and new. And hopefully we'll get to see you in the not too